Welcome to another edition of the Committed 100 Ministry Group, where I am 100% committed to teaching the Bible to those who are 100% committed to learn. We are currently in our verse-by-verse study of Mark's Gospel, and we're going to probably wrap up the teaching on Jesus's teaching on divorce, and time permitting, we want to get into briefly, Jesus and the little children. You know, it's always amazing that when you look at the life of Christ compared to the life of the apostles who were with him, they didn't have much patience or desire to be with the kids. They just kind of like shoot them away. You know, we don't want to really have to deal with them. Well, Jesus wasn't that kind of person, thankfully so. But before we get started, this is my last day before my vacation, so I will be off the entire month of August. A lot of stuff going on. In fact, I was already prepping the material for volume 3 of Revelation. And it's very important because chapter 4 is one of the pivotal chapters in the book. And I think one of the pivotal chapters of a lot of errant teaching among evangelicals. And I think volume 3 is going to be very interesting. So probably chapters 4 through 7. At this point, 4 through 7. And I'll let you know when the book will be available. So I've already been prepping everything. And I can always tell when the devil's in the details because some of the folders or some of the files could not be accessible. And I went, okay, I get this. I know what this is about. I don't want to forget that when you're prepping for something important, for things spiritual, stupid stuff happens. And usually the stupid stuff is more than just stupid stuff. I think it's the enemy just trying to, thwart the work one way or another. But God willing, we will prevail and get that out. Had a little earthquake here about a half hour ago, 4 point something in Fontana, so it's not here. A lot of people in Orange County told me they didn't feel it, and they live north of me. I felt it. And, anytime I feel an earthquake in particular, my first impulse is immediately go to prayer. I don't care if it's a 0 point nothing. If the house is shaking, I'm asking God for mercy. That's the first thing I do. Lord, have mercy on us. And he did. And I'm not surprised because usually when you have certain of these quakes in certain locations, it's not a surprise that we get one of our own. So again, thank you very much for joining me with this verse by verse study in the Word of God. And I want to say again before I go on vacation, thank you for your prayers, your continued prayers, and thank you, of course, for your financial support to the work and to me personally. Thank you very much for everything that you're doing. We're going to continue to put out radio broadcasts. Usually I do those quite a bit ahead of schedule. The television is I already had TV programs prepared all the way through this entire month of August and already in September. So I'm trying to stay ahead of everything. And thank you again for taking the time to be with me here in this daily offering. In verse 9 of Mark chapter 10, Jesus made it clear that what God had joined together, let no man put asunder or separate. Now, that's the conclusion for the Pharisees' insincere questions, and they have plenty of them, about marriage and divorce. Now, let me say again, every single question, and I mean without fail, We've seen this through all the studies in the Gospels. Every single question that these religious rulers and leaders and followers asked Jesus was complete insincerity. They had no desire to want to know the truth. The only reason why they asked Jesus these ridiculous questions is because they wanted to find fault with his words. That's what the text is saying all the time. So you put all the gospels together and you see that these men had no real desire to want to know anything. I mean, Luke says that they disguised themselves, they feigned themselves as righteous men and joined the crowd with Jesus, gave him all this false praise, all this nonsense, all this bloviating to get him to fall for the flattery. But the Lord doesn't fall for flattery at all. And this whole series on divorce, that the question about marriage and divorce, was one of those, again, one of the questions that they attempted to trip Jesus up. And little that they knew, Jesus is God the Son. And of course, he's not going to be fooled by any of these fools. So instead of arguing for points and issues whereby one may leave his wife, because it says, let not man put asunder, the argument should always fall back on the original purpose of the marital union from God, who created man and woman, and who alone has the right, and I want to say the sole right, to determine the proper behavior and to outline the responsibilities of each, and then to command them to fulfill them. Um, this again goes right back to the fact that any and every single rejection against God's plan is a rejection against Him. Marriage was instituted by God. Therefore, God is the only one who can orchestrate and order the events of a marital couple. God is a creator. He gets to tell his creation what to do because he made us. But of course, mankind, as Romans 1 says, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. The word fool is where we get our English word morons, and that's exactly what we see. And so, what is all this alleged gender reaffirming garbage? This demonic nonsense where there are all these different genders? It is all designed to thwart the original plan of God. Everything is. Everything is. If there's no distinction, if same-sex marriages are fine, if there are 85 different types of people, and the people can claim themselves to be a woman when they're a man, all that is far more than just some horizontal reaction to laws and what have you. No, it's a direct affront to God. That's the whole purpose of it. And that, of course, would include the issue of marriage without any question. So beyond the obvious, beyond news headlines, beyond special reports and breaking news nonsense, beyond courts and systems and manipulations, one must remember that this is all an attempt to affront God, to resist God. And again, if you're not thinking that, you're not listening to God. He's saying this is all an affront to him. And this is where chaos and confusion begins. And let me say this, I keep hating to switch between the screen, but if you notice in this context, and again, I want to keep things in context because that's important. The context here is with religious Jewish leaders who just continually, repeatedly divorce for non-biblical reasons or non-scriptural reasons. We'll get into that. And I want to say this. This is not the only teaching on marriage and divorce. I think a lot of people, if they ride a hobby horse, they have a tendency to, well, let's just say they focus on one aspect of the truth, but not all of it. They don't focus on the context of who is being referred to here. And that's important, like everything else. All right. All right. So God is the one who instituted marriage, not man. People argue for purposes and dissolve marriages because they fail to see God's purpose in it and then to follow his purpose. I don't recall anybody, and that's why I stopped doing marriages. I haven't done a marriage in a long time. I don't recall anybody ever asking me what was God's purpose in it before they even thought about it, which should have been the proper way. Before they even thought about marrying at all, they should have sat down and consulted with the scriptures and with the Lord and with God's man or men to find out what is the purpose of it, a deep dive into it and what's to be expected as a husband or wife. And very little of that, if any, ever goes on. I've never had anyone inquire um, with me about it. I wish they did. And I probably would have said no a lot more if I wasn't so young and stupid at the time. People argue again for purposes and dissolve marriages because they failed to see God's purpose in it and then to follow his purpose. When a couple is married, they are no longer a dual entity in God's eyes. They become one flesh. We know Paul said one flesh is a sexual union. And that's what it is. You hear a lot of this emotional, philosophical nonsense, but the fact is, one flesh means just that. Paul made it clear that one flesh means sexual union. And that's where it belongs. You're no longer two, you're one flesh. That's very important. And the context he uses it in, and I'm not going to get into it right now, is very important in regards to immorality. So this is something that, again, people need to really keep in mind. Now, God yokes together a man and woman so as to become one, and there is not to be a divorce. God's clear purpose is to join the man and the woman together, period, not to allow a man to divide them. Now, that's God's plan. That's the plan of God from the beginning. And if both parties understand this simplicity, then there should be no divorce even considered or ever considered if they understand God's plan. Verse 10. And in the house, his disciples asked him again of the same matter. So disciples are even more curious about, they have all these questions regarding. And he said unto them, whosoever shall put away his wife, put away means to divorce his wife and marry another, committeth adultery against her. Now, again, I want to focus again on the context of what Jesus is saying to them. This is very important. Stop ignoring the context. And if a woman shall put away her husband and be married to another, she committeth adultery. This is very interesting, and I'll get to the most interesting point in a moment. Jesus made it clear that he did not accept the popular thinking on divorce, since it clearly violated God's original purpose for marriage. And since the religious polity, the Jews, the leaders in particular, were constantly marrying and divorcing was so commonplace for these folks at that time, frankly, as it is today, Jesus made it clear that unless marriage was terminated by means prescribed in Scripture, he still considered the couple still married, and those who remarried were living in adultery. It's interesting to note here that under Jewish law, the wife had no right to divorce her husband. None. Now, she could under Roman and Greek law, but not according to the Old Testament. So Christ in this passage applies the same restrictions to those wives seeking the power to leave her husband. Very, very interesting. I remember a long time ago, many years ago, in Arizona, attending a gathering of saints that had a significant amount of young people. In fact, I would probably say maybe 80% of the church at that time were people in there, I would say probably from 18 to 25, very young, young teen, young adults. And one young lady decided to give her little spiel about how marriage was oppressive and how that the Bible teaches that God preferred singleness over marriage. Now, first of all, what she said, I don't know how she could talk about it. She was never married. How she said that marriage was oppressive was an opinion, and it was a stupid opinion on her part because I'm like, I don't know what she's talking about. She's never she's never been married, so how in the world would she know anything about marriage? So her and others, they have a tendency to view other people's marriages, and they do this to secure their confirmation bias either for or against something. And so she might have looked and, you know, they say, well, marriage is this, that, and the other because of this, that, and the other. And I just listened to her babbling and I went, okay, let's see how this will go. And I immediately corrected her foolish thinking. As I said, she was never married. So she spoke out of absolute sheer ignorance of the beauty of it. Now, if you want to find crappy marriages, okay, if you want to say, well, I wouldn't get married because, I see all these people and what have you uh, getting married. I don't know why you stopped at that. Why don't you say, well, I see how a lot of these jobs really stink, so I'm not going to work anymore. I think work is oppressive, you know, and you just apply that same ridiculous notion to anything. Well, man, that restaurant there, that's a terrible place to eat. I think eating food is oppressive. I mean, people say stuff and they really don't really think logically through. I'm almost using oxymoron because they're not using any logic. Second, her thinking was based on the amount of divorces that are in the land. And so here's something that the text reveals about the skyrocketing divorce rate and why so many professing whatevers are so ignorant of the issue of marriage and divorce. Divorce, and Jesus said it, is an indictment on the hard hearts of men and women, not on the sanctity of marriage or on the original plan of marriage. Now, let me stop here for a second. That's a very good point. Divorce is an indictment on the hard hearts of men and women, not on the sanctity of marriage or on the original plan of God for marriage. It's stupid to find fault with the marriage, with the sanctity of it, and the original plan of it because you decide you don't want to do it. You can't say that, well, the reason why I got a divorce is because the sanctity of marriage and the original purpose of marriage are wrong. No, you just got a hard heart. you don't blame God and his plan. This is why I don't understand for professing Christians why we are notorious for blaming God for a lot of things and we're not willing to blame ourselves, which obviously we should be doing it. It's just ridiculous. It really is. Marriage is not evil or to be avoided because of the divorce rate. But one is to see multitudes of wrong reasons why people A, get married, B, ignore God's plan in marriage, and C, have hard hearts as the reasons why there are so many divorces. So, nowhere in the Bible is marriage that God blesses seen as a burden. I don't know how people come to that ridiculous conclusion, especially since they really don't know. They just don't know. So the idea that marriage is a burden because you look at the wrong thing. In fact, someone asked me a long time ago or said to me, I would never get married. And I said, why not? Well, look at the divorce rate. I said, well, why don't you look at my marriage or others? I said, there are marriages that have stood the test of time. Even the crickets looked at her and said, she, why don't you answer? If you're looking for something to confirm a confirmation bias, fine. Does that make you right? No. You can't say, okay, the divorce rate is, listen, sometimes I wonder, what in the world do people, what in the world do people think a mind is given to them for? To put a hat on it? To comb it? To comb the head that it contained? I mean, are we even thinking anymore? So they say, okay, the marriage and divorce rate in this country, or any country, let's say this country, because we're a model for it, is like, let's say 50% or more. And so their conclusion is, well, we should marry, but fornication's fine. You see how stupid all that is? You keep blaming the marriage. Why don't you ask the 50% of people why they were married in the first place? It's like we don't even care anymore if the mind is working. We're not even thinking anymore. I think we just given up our thoughts and have been given up over to reprobate minds. So if 50% of people say that, or 50% of marriage and divorce, we don't focus on the 50% that are successful. We focus on the 50% that are unsuccessful. And then we say, well, marriage is wrong because of this. As you see, divorce, it's a stupid conclusion. It just, in your mind, satisfies your confirmation bias. You could just as easily look at the other 50% and go, wow, what did they do? Well, they followed God's plan. What if they lost? They still follow God's plan because God instituted marriage. So again, divorce is an indictment on the hard hearts of men and women, not on the sanctity of marriage or the original plan of God for marriage. Marriage is not evil. It is definitely not to be avoided because of the divorce rate at all. At all. Marriage is never seen as a burden, but people think it is because they want to. It's God's wonderful ordinance given to men and women, and I think it to be great. If you think otherwise, well, you're thinking wrong. It will eventually destroy your marriage, and when you do, it will be an indictment on you, not on the institution of marriage or God or who created it. I mean, if your mind is carnal and not thinking of your marriage from the perspective of God's original plan, divorce is imminent. It's just a matter of time. Or you could live under the same roof and hate the person. I have done enough marriage counseling as a pastor throughout the decades and stopped doing it. And I've always said why. And the number one reason why I stopped wasting time is because people are going to do whatever they want to do anyway. I don't know why people waste their time coming to pastors. I think all most people do is they use us for their own ends. We don't have any real relevance in their lives. And I just put an end to that nonsense. And I've been doing it for a long time. Like, no, I've gotten requests for people to perform marriage. I go, no, give me 10 grand. What? Just jokingly, because that's never going to happen. Because I just don't have any desire for it. Because nobody wants God's plan. Even amongst the professing Christians that I have said no to, they don't want God's plan. They want their own plan. And it's just, to me, a waste of time. All right, I think that's it. We didn't really get finished. Well, you know what? Let me not do that. Let me go ahead and conclude um, this point of marriage, and the next time, God willing, we'll deal with the children. I don't want to leave that cliffhanger here. All right. It is a wonderful ordinance. And if you really don't want to have a wonderful marriage, and we can get into, Lord knows, tons of details as to the why. And I'm not going to do it because I've been doing it. I've been teaching it forever in the framework and the context of the entirety of the Bible. So this is a topic and subject I've been dealing with for a long time. And I posted many things. Uh, it's like, wow, who's really listening to your report, Lord? Because it's right there, the Word of God. Ephesians 5, right there. Read it. Both of y'all read it. You know, Colossians 3, right there. Read it. There's no mystery. There's no secret. There's no nothing. What's the secret of marriage? Well, if it's a secret, we don't know it either. And if I thought there was, I wouldn't tell you because you're probably a record. There is no secret. Nothing at all. People say, well, marriage is this, that, and the other. Well, it's not. You're again just giving your confirmation bias. All right. I think that's it. Everyone's dropped off, so I guess that means that's the end of this program. All right, folks, Lord willing, I'll see you on Sunday for Sunday sermons. But commit 100. I will see you in September. I was singing the song, but I don't want nobody to copyright Living Daylight. So see you in September. So, God willing, vacation time, and may you continue to focus your attention on Christ.